like, okay, we work, we family. And if you've read that book, and about time blocking your personal time first. The guy does not need to work. He's a billionaire. However, what he talked about is, why he stepped back into the CEO role for Keller Williams. Obviously, some of you have heard the story with the idea of the industry changing and really having to be a leader in what's happening with technology and getting ahead of it to protect our roles as realtors, to help define what happens in the industry. And he says, history hasn't been written yet, the future hasn't been decided yet, so we really have the ability, we are really a part of what's happening in the industry, and we're creating that. So what he talked about was there are times in your life where you have to put the work in. And this is at that time for him, right? Where he is, and he'll say, talk to my wife, I'm here later. I'm here after we close. We drive by and our competitors' offices lights are off. I'm here doing what needs to be done at the time that it needs to be done. So that said, I think it was a good lesson for me. And what I want you to think about is, a lot of times we look at how do we counterbalance our life and how do we be able to fit everything else in. And we want to, and we do want a time block, and we still want to spend time with our family and do everything that's really important to us. And if you're at a place in your life, number one, where you don't want to be, meaning you have other goals, other ambitions, other things that you want to do, is that a time that might be a moment in your life where you have to put the work in? Okay, so what I think we may, and this is good for coaching notes, what it made me think about is, when we teach our new agents, for example, and this is a lesson for everybody, when we teach our new agents, a lot of time we do talk to them about time blocking, following the one thing, putting in their personal time first. And I think what tends to happen is sometimes they don't get the scope of what's necessary to build a business. And then the same is for seasoned agents, right? That we don't get the scope of what's necessary to be able to make changes in our business or to be able to get what we want out of our business. So I don't know that, most of you are probably not guilty of being lazy or not doing the work that you need to do. However, what I want you to really think about in perspective is what you may need to be doing right now, okay, to get the results that you want. And it may not be ultimately what you want your life to look like, if that makes sense, but sometimes you have to put that work in to get the results that you want. Does that help? Okay. So that was impactful for me. Again, he was talking about what's happening in the industry. This is a big moment. Is that a touch screen? Yes. Okay, this is a big moment, and it's going to get better and better. So he gave some statistics. However, they did ask us to put these things in the team meeting and talk about, which was a recap of some of the things that happened at Family Reunion. I know you guys had a recap panel, so you talked about some of these things already. What I actually want to focus on for this section, and these are slides and stats you can get. They're in Connect. I don't know if you know exactly where the link is, but there's Family Reunion. You could even go to the website, download presentation slides from the website. So I'm going to just kind of direct you to go look at some of the slides that I have in here, and I'm going to skip ahead of them because what I really want to show you, which was one of my big takeaways, and one of the things that I thought was most valuable, and we'll see if we can get this going, is there's just a handful of slides. Let's see if I can get this up here. It's already frozen. It doesn't like me. Okay, I'm going to have to show it to you this way. So this was a breakout session I went to, and it was called Profit Camp, Creating a Life Worth Living, and a MAPS coach was teaching it. And this was a big theme. If you were at Family Reunion, this was a big theme, was Gary had talked about reading the book Profit First. He had talked about that a couple years ago, which is a book I highly recommend for any business owner, and you are all business owners. And the philosophy behind it is pretty different to the way most people think about and run their businesses. So this was more about focusing on profit for your own life, building your net worth, and the things that you may need to do personally with your own expenses, finances, to make that happen for yourself. How many of you have a plan that you have on paper, not for your business, for your life in terms of growing your wealth and building your net worth, like a written plan? Okay, so that was one of the first takeaways is if we don't have a plan, are we gonna get there? Well, I don't know, maybe not. Okay, so you started one. So this was part of the lesson of this breakout session. The other thing was about the formula of how we think about profit. So if you tell me, if I asked you what is a formula for profit in a business, what would you say that is?
Revenue
Like a
less,
normal formula for profit. Like how do you, if you're an accountant, well,
revenue less expenses equals
Yep.
gross.
income minus expenses
yeah.
equals profit. So you take your income, you subtract your expenses, and then what's left over is your profit. And that's how most people think about business, run their business. Now, what's the challenge with that formula, which is the formula that has been the formula of all time?
We focus on revenue instead of profit. We spend all our money that we make.
Or
Yeah.
expenses unknown.
It's unknown. It's an unknown. So whatever's left over, the idea is whatever's left over is our profit. So what if nothing's left over?
What
The
is profit?
circumstances happen.
Which
Yeah.
can happen,
Yeah.
right?
It
So what do we
does,
have
it does.
control of, and how do we
Yeah.
kind of tweak that and look at it a little bit differently so that we're more purposeful and we can plan on what that profit is going to be. So I'm just going to do this here because that one's not happening. So basically, this is there's a couple of formulas that I want to share with you. One is to focus on profit. So, and I'll just kind of show you these circles. So this says pick your profit, right? And the moral of this is profit first, and that's the name of the book that a lot of these concepts come from. So you're going to pick your profit first. Hey, guess what? What do you want your profit to be? Why don't we decide in advance how much money we want to net? Okay, what do we want our profit to be? So that's number one. Number two is build a pro forma around that number. Just like you do for working backwards with what you want your GCI to be in your business plan, right? I want my GCI to be X. Now I'm going to build a pro forma around that. That's my 135. What do I need to do? What are my tasks? How many homes do I have to sell? At what price? Right? To equal that. Now, what we don't talk about with your business pro forma on your GCI is that it's GCI, which stands for what?
Gross.
It's gross. Okay, so this is not about gross. This is about net. And I can tell you when I interviewed with, I talked to hundreds of agents before we opened this office 4 years ago. And one of the big takeaways that I had, and I spoke to many agents that were highly successful, meaning they sold a lot of homes. Okay, so their sales volume was very high. And they may know their gross commission. Great, how much gross commission income did you earn last year? A lot of them knew that number. What they didn't, then the question was, what did you net? Okay, so one, a lot of people didn't know. Two, some people knew and it was not a good number. So I would talk to people that had a much lower GCI than somebody else, and that person took home a lot more money, right? So this is what we're talking about. Doesn't matter how many homes you sell and how much your gross commission income is if at the end of the day you have zero. Okay, so pick your profit, build a pro forma around it. Then what you're going to do is you're going to filter your decisions around that pro forma that you've created. So it makes it a little easier once you have a plan in place, because then you start to make decisions on a daily basis, right? And you go, do you think it's easier to make decisions about what you're doing and not doing based on your plan?
Yes.
Yeah, right? So once you have that in place, so this goes for your business too, and you all want to have this for your business anyway, and then you also would want to have one for personal, okay? So build a pro forma, filter your decisions around the pro forma, and here's one that you guys are going to cringe. I know a lot of you will cringe because you may not be like to look at financials a lot. Review your financials monthly. Review your financials monthly. So who reviews their financials monthly, just out of curiosity? Anybody in here? Okay, so Nicole does.
Good.
Gold star.
I do with my coach.
Now you do with your coach. Having a coach really helps because that forces you to do that. If that's something that you're working on with them. My biggest, the thing that changed my life the most in this was when I hired a bookkeeper. How many of you have a bookkeeper? Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of where this was really important recently. We had to sign a lease pretty fast for a space in Kona because we weren't going to, the opportunity was going away and we really wanted this space. We had to sign it. I ended up having to be a guarantor on it, and I needed to get documents in. Literally, they were overdue. Like, she was like, you have to have this today. I have to have this in today. And some of the one of the documents was a P&L, personal P&L, and another was a balance sheet. And I, at first, was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to put this together today, in a day? So I'm like, Cheryl, I'm in the middle of the appointment. Cheryl, can you call up my bookkeeper and find out if she can send this to us and get it to us? So Cheryl comes back in the office and she goes, oh yeah, your bookkeeper said you just log into your QuickBooks account and you can just print it. And I was like, what? So I log into my QuickBooks account, which I never do normally, right, often, because she's doing this for me every month, and I didn't necessarily need that. And I look, she's like, just go to the reports section and you'll see everything you need there. Reports, P&L, balance sheet, click, PDF, emailed over, like 5 minutes. So just knowing that I had that, now it's like, okay, I should be looking at this every month, and I do have that. So you have to put that resource in place. It's the best money you can spend to really take a look at and inspect what your finances are. So that's my tip for the day. If you don't have a bookkeeper, get one. By the way, I use May. Used to be May Namaho, now she's May Wright. She worked at RAM for years as their bookkeeper, if you remember May. She works for Kawahara and Who. Do we have any bookkeepers that work with us, that are agents with us that you guys know? Because that would be good to support them too. I know that Doug Weber is a CPA. No, yes,
I
think
used to
he's a
do
CPA.
bookkeeping years ago.
Okay, well, you don't want to get into
I don't
that.
want to get into that.
Okay, so here are three ways or reasons that agents don't run a profitable business. By the way, these slides, this presentation is one of the presentations that is available on the Family Reunion website. If you go to familyreunion.kw.com, you go to the breakout sessions of the 16th, and the breakout was 7:45 a.m. Yeah, I go to the breakouts at 7:45 a.m. because that's what we're there for. Some people may be sleeping, but not me. Okay, so 3 reasons agents don't run a profitable business. Number 1, they are managing a business for production, not profit, right? What we just talked about. Well, my goal is to sell 100 million in real estate. Cool. Let's look at a profit goal, okay? Because what can happen as your business grows and you start to sell more real estate? What tends to go in alignment with increased income?
Expenses.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will if you are not managing that from day one. So they're managing business for production, not profit. They are not keeping a budget and a monthly profit and loss. And I know realtors, a lot of realtors, it's not a fun thing to do. They don't love to do it. So just get a bookkeeper. And it made my life, like, she has access to, I mean, this may be good or bad. She has access to all my stuff. She goes in my bank account, she can charge stuff. I mean, I give her permission, pay my tax bill, pay whatever, she can go in, she pulls my bank statement, she categorizes them for me. I mean, like, it's ridiculous. And then she sends it to me to review before taxes, have to be submitted. And she's like, I already categorized all these for you, and these were the 5 items that I wasn't sure, so I guessed on, can you verify that? So now I have 5 items to look at instead of like 12 months of bank statements and going through and combing those. Okay, so not keeping a budget, a monthly P&L. 3, they are spending all of their profit, right? Not thinking strategically about how to reinvest in their business to increase the profit further. Gary says the cost of your bad habits is your future. Your outcomes in life are the lag measures of your habits. Cost of your bad habits is your future. Your outcomes in life are the lag measures of your habits. So when we talk about, who knows what a lag measure is? Like when he talks about lag measures, what does that mean?
My
You guys know?
It's time indicator measurement.
So you do something and that's a leading measure, and then the lag measure is going to be the
Right.
result of whatever it is that you did. So here's some examples of habits. Leading measures would be planning your profit goals in advance. That's a leading measure. So what can we control? What can we do to assure that whatever shows up at the end is what we want? So planning your profit goals in advance. Leading measure, take out your profit monthly. So profit first. Pay yourself first. This is one of the big things, takeaways from this. Create and follow a GPS business plan that supports your goals, which everybody in this office should have. If you do not have a business plan or GPS, meet with somebody who can help you do it. I offer, my schedule's open, especially when I come over here. So if you want to meet with me and have me do your business plan with you because you don't have it, your GPS, it's a 1-sheeter. I did it with many of you initially and may not have revisited with you this year. Because you're on the ALC, so you have yours. If you're on the ALC, you got to do it, or you can't be on the ALC. So if you want me to meet with you, schedule with Cheryl with me when I'm over here, because I'm coming over here. So I'll do that with you. Be held accountable to your activities and goals, right? Accountability, having a coach. I have 2 coaches. So that helps for accountability, for your goals. Lagging measure would be your profits and your business goals are being met. So as a result of everything you're doing, are we getting the profit rather than just, because most people it's like, is there money left over? And if there's not, I'm not paying myself. Right? That's a problem. Experience a life worth living. That's a lagging measure. So if you're not doing those things, are you experiencing the life that you want to live? Lowered stress and increased fun. That sounds good. Okay. Gary says you wouldn't work for a company for any dollar amount. Like if you think of yourself not as an independent contractor realtor, but you were going to go get a job for a company, you would want to get paid what you're worth, right? What if somebody said, so say your profit in your real estate business is $15,000 a year. Would you go work for a company for $15,000 a year if that's what they were paying you? Right? So when you look at it that way, that's what you're paying yourself, like there's an issue there, right? So you would want to get paid the amount you're worth, determine the profit you're worth, and then set that as your bar as to what you will net out of your business this year, because guess what? You can control it. If you are selling real estate to pay your bills, you are a real estate agent. If you are selling real estate to fulfill a purpose and have a life worth living, you are running a business. So are you an agent or are you running a business? Are you a lifestyle agent or are you a growth agent? Are you just making money and then spending it? Or are you actually putting it back, investing your business, growing your business, and having a plan? The consumption meter. Gary says manage your business for profit, not for productivity. We talked about that. Okay, so here's the actual formula. It's very simple, although complex, because you actually have to do it. The simple version of it, so the old way of thinking we talked about at the beginning is income. So we talked about this. And in our business, it's income minus cost of sales, because that's a separate category than expenses. So we have cost of sales and we have expenses. So income minus cost of sales minus expenses equals profit. That's how most people run their business. The new way of thinking is income minus cost of sales minus profit, top line. We're putting this above the line, profit, we're paying ourselves first, minus owner salary equals expenses. So profit, owner salary, what we're paying ourselves, what our profit in our business is going to be that we may be reinvesting, and then expenses are at the bottom. So the idea is, so if expenses are under the line, what does that tell you about expenses in this business? What does that mean to you? If you see that expenses, instead of being on top of the line, expenses are on the bottom of the line.
Least important.
What is it?
Least
important, and also it's a fixed number based on what you want, what you want your profit number to be. So when you put expenses down here at the bottom, that means you're going to be limited to what you can spend every month. It's not just whatever's left over from whatever I happen to spend is my profit. Does that make sense?
Your expenses are a plan.
Your expenses are planned, are a plan.
What's the cost of service? Example?
Cost of sales is, for example, like what you pay for like the brokerage, right? So your cost of sales would go way down when you're capped because you don't have that split. So split would be an example of cost of sale.
Okay.
Your expenses are going to be business expenses. You also might have people, personnel. So in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent and in the chart of accounts, it breaks down. So you can look in the book too. It'll tell you like here's cost of sales, here's expenses, for example. And we have examples of that. So there was one other thing I wanted to say about that. I don't remember what it was. Okay, so income. Oh, I know what it was. So the formula, just real quick. So how do you determine what you want your cost of sales and your expenses to be, and what you want your profit to be? So you say, okay, Lisa, here's my goal of my number. Is this a reasonable goal based on the business that I've built? So this is a very simple yet effective formula. This is what you want. This is what you want. This is what the top agents in the company use as a guide. Okay, that are in Gary Keller's top 100. Did you go to that meeting? You went to that individual agent meeting, right? Yeah, so they probably talked about 30, 30, 40.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So I
30.
think what happens is with the individual agents, I think
Yep.
a lot of the reason why he's changed his focus to individual agents has been because of this new focus on profit versus revenue, because everyone was just trying to drive their volume to compete with
Yes.
everyone. And then what happened is, what they realized then is, they started looking at net profit. They started realizing that individual agents are actually making more money than many of these really big groups and teams
Yeah.
when they carve it all up. So they're like, wait a second, we should be talking to these guys, because individual agents can go up to 40%, 60% profit. It's a different formula.
That's
you know?
crazy.
Yeah.
That's really high. So that's a good point. Yeah, and I think the other thing is small teams. So what he found was, if you are team building, when you are team building, it's the smaller teams that have, and I wrote it down in my notes in our mastermind. I want to say it was 4 to 5. It was no more than 4 to 5 agents, and then your admins. And they had a lot of individual agents, like Dean said. They focused on individual agents on stage. I mean, this one woman, the one from California, she's an individual agent, and she closed, it's like 240 units in LA, and she has like 6 admins, so she doesn't have any other agents doing that. Now, some people may say, I don't know if I really want that kind of pressure on my business, if I go away, my business goes away. However, so if you are team building 4 to 5, not this idea of now we're building a super team, which is what a lot of those agents were doing, and they were doing a lot of volume, but when Gary really looked at the numbers, what Dean was saying, they were not profitable, or as profitable as they should have been, for all of that work and expense. Their expenses were so high that what if something happens, and now you have these fixed expenses that are outrageously high, you can't maintain that. So, and this is, by the way, a good time historically to have this conversation, right? So what you want to really look at doing in your business today to be prepared in the event that shifts, even just time of the year, right? Like summer tends to be slower, right? Well, we're getting out of winter, you guys. We're getting out of our high season, so what do we need to do to be prepared? So if you start to look at in your business right now, and I would challenge you guys to do this is the formula you're shooting for, which is 30% cost of sales. So this would again be like your commission splits, brokerage, and there's a couple other categories. That's most of that category though. Referral fees, yes. And then expenses, your business expenses. So those, if you need a chart for that, I mean, again, we have the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Chart of Accounts. It's such a great one to use as an example.
And that's marketing included in expenses?
Marketing is included in expenses, and marketing, that's a good point too. Marketing is usually 10% of this. 10%.
10% marketing.
10% to marketing of this 30%.
Right.
So then that's 20% other expenses. And then you want to see a 40% net profit. That's a healthy business in any industry. And this is the guide that we want to go by. So that was just one of the many breakouts and takeaways, and I thought it was a really great one. And it's something we don't focus on a ton, because we focus a lot on the leading measures, and we focus a lot on like the sales volume, and that's really important. I mean, yes, if you get that stuff up, you're going to have results. The question is then, now how do you manage that, and how do you make sure that you're keeping that profit? What's a takeaway for you guys on that?
I think that the point that the expenses are fixed is a good point, because when you run your volume, your volume up and your expenses remain unchanged, obviously you get so much more profitable.
Yes.
When you get over the, that point of where you normally would be, and then you can go to another level, your expenses don't change really.
Yeah.
So it's all profit.
That's exactly right. Keep your expenses fixed, and it's much easier to do that when you have a plan around that, and it's not shiny penny syndrome, right? That's where agents can get into danger with shiny penny syndrome, which is what would be a shiny penny that an agent might end up spending money on that
buying leads that are not fruitful.
Buying leads that when somebody calls you and says, hey, we have this great thing, or you can have this territory, or whatever it is, and you're like, okay, I'm going to throw $500 a month at that. That's your profit. So really think about that. Every dollar that you spend, this is another good formula for you. Every dollar that you spend, first of all, you should inspect the results of that, and you want a 3 times ROI. 3 times. That's a great ROI. If it's less than that, I'm not saying it's not worth doing. I talk to agents that, just double. They'll spend, say they spend $10,000, they get $20,000. Okay. Yes, you can still do that. What you really want though is 3 times. And how do you track that? Is anybody tracking, are you guys tracking what you're spending money on and what that return is producing for you? Okay, great. So you're inspecting, you're looking at your P&L every month, that's why, right? So if you really start to look at these things every month, it's gonna tell you. Now, we don't sell 240 units a year here, that's not possible. If any of you wanna do that, you can. However, so it's actually easier for us in a way because we're not, our businesses are here and the amount of transactions we're doing is, I would say, manageable in a way to look at these things. Okay. So what's one thing that you can do to take a step closer in this direction between now and the next meeting? Between now and next week?
Have a plan?
Put a plan in place on paper.
Yeah.
A profit plan, profit first plan. That's
And now that most of us are doing our taxes, we're
mm-hmm.
gonna have all
You can
those
do the
reports to give
calculation,
to our
yeah.
CPA.
Yes!
Actually
You
see
have the
what we
opportunity.
did and then plan
Yes.
it for the future.
So
That's
you,
a great
you have
point.
all your personal expenses separated from business expenses,
Yes,
is what you have.
I do.
yes.
So
Yeah.
she doesn't touch your personal, your bookkeeper.
That's not true. She does. They're in there. I mean, they're separated, so I can see what they are. But they actually are in there. And right now, I'm creating a separate system so that I can track them. So it's easier for me to track them independently. But it is all actually in there. But I can separate them out and see what's personal and what's business.
Coaching is where this really, I mean, the coaches are
Yes.
really great at doing all this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And that's the only reason I've done it is because someone's forced me to do it.
Right.
Basically. And then hold
So,
you accountable,
yeah.
which is great. It's really awesome. I mean, it's been a great change in my world of, I was exactly the same as what you talked about, which was I was scrambling and never seemed to get anywhere. And I think ultimately sitting down and setting a goal and then the goal is great, but it's not really the goal. It's the action plan on how to get to your goal, which is really key for me because it just, it's so much stress relief to have a plan. To know that actually if I just follow this plan, I'm going to get to where I want to go. I never really had that plan. I always had goals, but no real specific plan and steps on how to get there.
Yeah.
And it's really the key to the process.
Love that. The peace of mind, the less stress, and the confidence to know that you can course correct when needed and continue this, as a career. I mean, for as long as you want to do it. So thank you for sharing that. Okay. Right, didn't work. Okay. Let me go back to, oh my gosh. Okay, not now. So I'm gonna skip some of these other, if I can even get back over there. Dude. Okay, Dawn, can you come help me and get this back on track? Okay, so I have a couple other points of business I can go through. These are all the numbers. Just some notes while she's getting that back. Can you get this back up for me? It's frozen again. So Michelle couldn't be here today. There were a couple things though that I wanted to share with you just to make sure you're aware of. Obviously you guys heard about the short-term rental housing. Who was at that meeting, by the way? Okay, Sue, you were at that meeting. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I was on Oahu and I couldn't be there and I heard what occurred, but since you were there firsthand, can you speak to
So
it?
we showed up, the meeting was 3 o'clock and planning commission, and there was a line wrapped around the building. People trying to get in to find out what on earth was going on, because of course the level of information that had been shared was minimal. It was just this, oh, well, we're just thinking about banning them, and yeah, no real plan or anything. But so there was an uproar, and Michelle McLean had met with MVRA, who's the Maui Vacation Rental Association, and with the Realtors Association, I think over previous couple of weeks, and had sort of alluded to this is what they were trying to do. Molokai, they had already banned them. There were 17 short-term rental permits that were issued there, and they are now longer not in effect. So the nuts and bolts of it was they had this PowerPoint presentation, which was about maybe 5 or 6 slides, and actually Darren pointed out that all the stats they used there were from a lobbyist, and it just got more and more heated when people were just kept asking why, we
Right.
just couldn't get that out of them. And the only thing that she actually said was, we've been getting calls from people and they're saying that they don't know who their neighbors are now. So, and there was landscapers in the audience, there were cleaning people, there were property managers, people with short-term rental permits. I mean, everybody was against it, and I think that they finally figured that the response they got, it was, maybe they should put a little more thought into it.
Yeah.
She had no numbers. People were saying, well, you know, how many people are actually calling? You know, you've got 229 permits that have actually been issued. You know, you're just gonna wipe that out. What about the property tax difference? What about the general excise tax and the TAT tax that you're gonna lose? What about how it's gonna affect the economy?
Yeah.
And it just was typical. One of the huge things for me was Suki Lay,
Yeah.
who was the upcountry representative, who
Yeah.
came in and had been sitting there for a good over an hour listening to what was going on. Finally gave this sort of, oh, isn't this great that Michelle's doing this meeting for us? And I didn't know this meeting was happening, but I just happened to drop in, and it's so great that you're all here and you're all concerned, and you're all, it's not like we're gonna ban these.
Wait, what?
Yeah, the whole lady was just like, that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
I was just like,
That's really
how
weird. I
Oh
saw
my
her. I
God.
actually saw her on the plane.
woman is in charge. So they left it with, we don't know how we're going to proceed, and that was it.
Okay, well-
Laura Paulson also then started in on the Minatoya ruling, which
Yes.
is the next thing.
Yeah, that's the next
And
thing.
Michelle McLean immediately tried to shut her down with, we're not talking about that right
Yeah.
now. And Tamara's Minatoying over in the corner, so.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So, I mean, who knows what that means? In a way, it kind of sounds good because they don't really have it together and they don't have the supporting information. They, you know, so, however, we monitor and just keep tabs on that. So that's what we're gonna do. The other thing was regarding, and of course, Michelle sent out that email to everybody just because, you know, we had the whole conversation of disclosure where you have people, so we really just looked at the pendings that we had or anybody, so you know if you're talking to people about it. I mean, it's an up and down thing. You could say, well, no, it's not really that far along that we need to do the disclosure. However, you know, the meeting's happening, we should let people know, because if they are buying, even if they're only gonna they're gonna short term it in 5 years because they can't do it anyway now, you know, things may be different in 5 years and we don't know. So I think it was important to get that word out. Minatoya is a whole nother can of worms that will have, I mean, you know, that would be a tremendous impact. The logical side of me says, so if you guys are not familiar with the Minatoya ruling, they're looking at reversing it, which would create, you know, many of the short-term rental condo complexes would no longer be able to do short-term rentals, and that would be huge. And logically I go, well, that's ridiculous that they would ever do that, because when you think about the repercussions of that, it's insane. Like, you would think anybody, so that even that, but the conversation is happening, so we have to be aware of that.
Do you know what the logic is behind that though? The logic is effectively
Yes.
that if they take all the vacation rentals
Yeah.
away, then they'd have to be rented long term. With the glut of inventory that would come onto the market, it would force the long term rents down for the local residents. That's really the theory.
That's the
behind
only,
it.
yes, that's the only thing that they're saying, which in
To make it
reality,
more affordable,
but-
essentially.
right.
Not saying it's a good
Yeah.
theory.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
saying
yeah.
the
That's their
basis
theory.
of it.
That's their theory.
I mean, based on that, you know, based on the association fees, the lease rents, the, you know, the property taxes, the rents would have to be $3,500 a month
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
a,
it's,
a
it's,
800 square foot
ludicrous.
condo.
yeah.
Right.
And no one's gonna
Not
pay that.
So again, it's another example of, it sounds like not really thinking it through, not having all the information, and maybe that was a great exercise for them to get the information they got and realize where their position
The
is,
questions are, yeah.
and maybe they won't pursue it any further, you know?
So the surprising part for me was, because, you know, again, I was kind of on top of what was going on. I was sitting open house a couple days, and 50% of the people that came through the open house had seen it on the front page of the Mountain News
Ah.
and were asking about it.
Ah.
So
Really
we
interesting.
better be aware of what's going on.
That's great. That's a great point. Yeah, your clients, people are going to ask, right? So that's another reason, you know, to be proactive. It's like, well, why didn't you tell me this? Well, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, you want to know what's happening. Thank you. So another thing I would have you look at, speaking of knowing what's going on, is you should probably look up the bill that was introduced, which is Senate Bill 3110, that talks about foreign investors I don't know if you've seen that, where they're now looking at banning, I mean, and this is like the new word, ban, we're banning, let's say limiting foreign investor purchases in the islands.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they're talking about now. So this is another bill that actually went through the Senate already, that we need to be aware of, which, you know, again, if now we're talking about, you know, they think that foreign investors are driving up prices and foreign investors are preventing other people, local people from being able, it's like, yeah, so it's going to the House next. I mean, again, you think to yourself, they're crazy, like why would they ever do this? And yet there it is. So you might want to look that up too, because that's another thing that's on the table right now. And you know, really how you can find out, there's stuff that goes on in the background all the time that doesn't quite come to the surface publicly, and then we notice when it comes to the surface. And I learned that when I was on Government Affairs Committee at RAM. This stuff is going on all the time, and there are things that are introduced all the time. And a lot of the time they just get flushed out, or Jason Economou is like going and driving and rallying people together, and we shut things down, or when I was on Government Affairs. But if you want to know what's going on and you're interested in this kind of stuff, go to a Government Affairs Committee meeting at RAM. They happen once a month, and get informed, because it's fascinating what comes up, and you can see what are the ones that are really concerning and making it through and getting involved. Because once we get that call to action, it's usually like they've been working on it for a while before then. Okay. I had also an example of something that happened that I wanted to share with you guys and remind you. This was on a deal that we had where we were representing the seller. It's a reminder about contingencies and asking the questions if somebody needs to buy. So this was a seller that needed to buy something as well, and they received an offer on the property. There was no conversation or discussion on paper or otherwise about the seller also buying a property and having the buyer have any agreement, right? Because if it's a seller contingency, we think about it if it's a buyer contingency and the buyer has to sell something to buy, because they have to disclose that. It has to be accepted in the offer. We don't always think about it when the seller needs to then buy something. And then when you get the offer, having that conversation and making sure that the buyer agrees to extend, to lease back, to whatever is necessary to do to make sure that your seller, if that's who you're representing, is taken care of. Because it put us in a situation where now they were having challenges with buying their property and their loan, which they were pre-approved for. The lender was like, no problem. The agents took that, or the listing agent took that as okay. And now they have to close on the property that they've listed. They don't have anywhere to go, that they can't buy that property. And, you know, we run into this sometimes. I'm just, the lesson and the reminder is ask the questions to sellers and buyers about, do they need to sell to buy, and are they gonna buy after they sell, what are they gonna do, so that we can make sure we're working for them when they get an offer. Because if that had been negotiated up front, they wouldn't be in the predicament that they're in, and they're kind of out of luck. They're out of luck. They have to sell, they have to close. They've already extended, and you know, they don't have an out. So
Is that
just
a 1031? Is that what you're talking about?
it's not even, no,
Oh.
it's not a
It's
change.
not a
The thing is, I think that the owner maybe has to move out, doesn't have any place to move to.
Oh, got it.
And it's kind of tough to find a place for them too, right? Okay, let's move on to the rest of, no, it's restarting. Okay, I'm gonna go through this. Luckily it's printed out. Okay. So who has been playing with the consumer app? Robert's not here either, so I'm just gonna do a brief kind of tech thing. Consumer app, anybody?
I am.
Okay, downloaded, playing with it. What are some of the things you're noticing? In terms of features, or have you been sharing it with clients?
If anybody's having any problem putting yourself as an agent on there, and for some reason you're not already branded, there's a little bit of a trick around that. So,
Okay, so if you're not showing up as the branded
Agent.
agent on your consumer app, call Nicole.
yeah, there's a trick.
Or Robert, there's a trick
Yes.
to adding yourself. But most of us, it's updated automatically, which
Should
it
be.
did, mine did.
Yep.
From the
Um,
right? Mine updated.
And our
be.
clients should also be, theirs should be updated automatically, so anybody that you shared this with. I can't stress enough the importance of sharing your consumer app with people now.
I did
like-
find the old version more user friendly than this one myself.
Really?
Oh, I didn't, I don't at all. Most
Really?
people,
Even
most of
though
the
I'm
feedback I'm
using-
getting is the opposite.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I find the new one amazing.
So one of the
Yeah.
reasons that it's so important, and Gary stressed this too, it's like, right now, there really is kind of a land grab because of the tech changes that are happening in the industry, meaning a land grab of, it's a terrible way to say it, and I love our clients, I'm not like saying their property. But if you want to make sure you secure those relationships with something like your consumer app, which is a perfect thing to do because eventually it's gonna start letting them know, you know, rather than you calling them right now, telling them, by the way, they can get a loan at 3% and they might want to consider refinancing if they bought at 7%. Which, by the way, you should be making those calls right
That
now.
just changed.
I wanted to make
Oh, what changed?
The interest rates.
Oh, okay, so that makes
Just went
sense.
the opposite
That makes
direction.
sense. That makes sense that they'd be going up.
I was
Okay.
going to say another important element to that is that if you're the first one to send your app to your clients, it's great because if there's more than one KW
Yeah, if
agent,
there's other KW
they'll be
agents,
forced to choose who do you want to work with.
they have to
from
brand
here
it
on
to
out.
one agent. So that's a really good point. The other thing is this really is how they communicate and how they get their information. And it's what ties you to the relationship with them if you're not in touch with them frequently. That app is what will tie them to the relationship. And the features that it has now and that it's going to continue to add on the AI side, the artificial intelligence side, will start letting them know
When
things.
does that kick in?
Well, right now, I think it has, I don't know, you mean like on the notifications for mortgage? I
Or
think
like
you
for
can,
like properties, you know, they start to learn their habits and what have you.
That's a good question.
Not yet.
I don't know if you can set that up yet. I know you can set up, they can set up their searches, but I don't know if it auto
Profile.
sends them based on their preferences
Right.
But
yet.
that's coming eventually. Right?
Yes.
So what would you say are like the 3 most unique features of this app that would be used for marketing this
So-
app over other apps?
Sure. So well, first of all, you can say that it was blind tested against Realtor.com and Zillow, and it won,
Yeah.
which it was. It was also tested by Google before it got released. Google themselves gave it seal of approval and said like, this is awesome, this is perfect. The features of the app would be Home DNA. So Home DNA is that's the one where it will auto notify you on any new listings that come out based on their patterns of what they're looking at, not because you saw the listing come out or you just sent them an auto notification on any 3-bedroom, 2-bath, whatever. It's going to start paying attention to what they're looking at on the app and look like, I like this ocean view or I like an open kitchen, and then it will start to filter the listings as they come out, and it'll say this is a 98% Home DNA match based on what you like, based on what you're looking at. So it's going to start to make those filters much better and tighter. So you can say, if they've ever looked for a property before, instead of you getting every single listing that comes out that may not be what you're looking for, because right now we have limited ability to control that, right? If it's a Paragon search and you're like, oh God, I got to take out this type of property all the time, or they're going to hate that, but it's part of the criteria. So Home DNA would be one. The ability to sync it with the CRM in Command, and being able to, so you can see their activities. So like right now, if you create a market snap for them, which creates a landing page that updates in real time on their neighborhood, when they go in and look at that page at any time, it will start to populate in Command, which will populate in your app. Right now, I think it shows up in Kelly, but that's all going to be tied together. So it keeps you, so then when you go, who do I call now? Well, does it make sense for me to call this person that I might want to call and see how they're doing, who wanted to buy in a couple of months? Or am I going to call the person that just went on that page and started looking at property again? Who would you call?
The warm one.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
How about this, as far as zooming in closer, like a neighborhood, we can go in tighter into neighborhoods and other apps, is that true?
no, you can zoom in and you can pull in and then look at a satellite view.
I mean, on our app, you can draw a circle around it.
You can map now.
So
Yeah.
You can map now.
can you do that in other apps?
Oh, I don't know.
Yes.
Yes. You
Okay.
Oh, can you map in other apps? That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. So how does it compare to
So
other?
how did we gain
Ask-
from the buying next door? What was the gain of Nextdoor?
To have more neighborhood community information in there, local community information for those particular communities. There's also Porch, which Michelle's gonna talk about at the next team meeting, and Porch is the home inspection program. So, which isn't necessarily the consumer app specific, but it's command specific. So we're gonna start we have access now to past home inspections that were done for maybe a listing that you've got coming up. So you can look that stuff up before you say go on a listing appointment, or provide it to a seller. Like, you know, and yes, somebody said, well, if you provide that and then they know information now about the property they didn't know before, do they have to disclose it? Well, yes. You know, however, the information is valuable, right, for you and them. So she'll talk about that too. It'll be good for Robert. Robert can come back and talk about the mobile app. Latasha, by the way, will be coming over here too. She's kind of shifting a little bit more also into marketing and technology. Like, she's amazing, and she's super tech savvy. So she's also going to be available to help you guys to implement. And what I'm going to have her do is actually do one-on-one meetings with you, like call all of you. So you're going to get calls. It'll be a little while before she transitions, but you're going to get calls, and she's going to say, hey, how you doing with this stuff? Is your consumer app set up? Let's meet. I'm going to help you do it. I'm going to help make sure your database is set up. Your touch campaigns are going out.
What's her name?
Latasha. She works in Kahului in our front desk.
So I don't
Chris?
know if this is kind of where Dean was going, but I think we need some kind of bullet point
Yeah.
for the features,
To
because
talk to the
I'm
client.
having a real challenge of getting people to switch out of what they've been using, because they've been using Zillow for 8 years, you know, or Redfin, and they're very reluctant to change.
Got it.
Yeah, so there's some selling.
Can
some
I give you a
points in-
suggested script for that?
Yeah.
So when you say to somebody, I have a consumer app, and they go, oh, I use Zillow. Awesome, have you been using that for a while? Yes, great, I consider you an expert. Will you do me a favor? Check mine in comparison to what you've been using and tell me which one you like the best
that's
and
good.
give me some feedback.
That's a good idea.
See if they'll do it.
Yeah, I think the key, the app is kind of a key piece of this whole business for us moving forward, because like we talked about last week or whenever it was, that you know, people that are losing listings are more than 60% of the time is because they never made a personal connection, or don't have an emotional connection or this relationship with people. And the app is a way of creating something really personal for the experience for the consumer. That's personal to them. Like, they come into our app, but it's actually their app because it's personalized for them. And you're creating that personal connection with people. That's going to be a really important part of the future of real estate. It's that, you know, personalized experience, a Netflix experience that everyone's looking for right now. And it's been proven now with statistics like 60% of the time you leave a listing, you haven't made a personal connection with someone, that these kinds of experiences for these consumers are going to be a big part of how we're going to create loyalty and keep our clients and get new clients in the future. You know, it's that customized experience that everyone's looking for right now. And this is exactly what we're developing. You know.
Yeah, and to your point and your question about that also reminds me, you said what's different. So here's another thing that's different that they can't do in other apps, I can tell you that. This app will allow them to communicate with you through the whole transaction via the app. So they can actually make an offer via the app. Like everything they want, they have a make an offer button. So if they go schedule a showing button in the middle of the night, they could hit schedule a showing and it will schedule a showing. So like there's scheduling showing, make an offer. So you could say, hey, it's a way for you, it's like a one-stop shop for you to communicate with me and me to communicate with you, where we go through the whole transaction together in this, not just search for your property. That's another part of the script that it could be. You can also share, which they can kind of do in certain collab centers, but they can add other people to threads about properties too, and if they want to share a property that they mark, that they have as a favorite, that can be shared with somebody else too. So I don't know if other apps do that part. They might do it to an extent, but it is the only one that's kind of designed as an end-to-end consumer experience, from the time you connect and meet them to the end of the transaction and even after the transaction. So that's the other thing. Does your current app help you when you're not buying or selling? Does it let you know when rates might be somewhere where you could save money and refinance for free? Does it let you know how much? Does it give you bids with local personal vendors that our clients have worked with? And you can get bids if you have to fix something. And I can help make sure that that's happening for you, like, because then you're aware. So those are some of the unique things that are not
And
on
this
other
goes from,
apps.
you know, finding the property, which is what the app is for, to take them all the way through making an offer, the escrow, the closing. Now, ultimately, the goal is to have this app be the entire experience for a consumer.
No, it is.
From
Yeah.
looking for a property to closing.
Yeah,
Which
you use
no
it.
one else really does that.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you. It is. Okay. So, campaigns, Facebook leads. Just out of curiosity, who's using social media ad campaigns right now through Command? You guys are.
Not through command, not yet.
Oh, you're not doing it through Command, the Facebook targeted ads.
I created one, I haven't posted it yet.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say that might be a good thing to look at to add to your business, because the leads, it says $2 leads with campaigns, so they are down in cost. Now here, I will say it ends up being a little bit more because of the amount of inventory we have. However, you could still use those to target other areas where those buyers may be coming from. So you could use targeted Facebook ads to showcase the listing that you have. By the way, you don't have to have a listing. If you want to either brand yourself personally or you want to talk about Keller Mortgage, which is pretty awesome, or you want to use somebody else's listing with the company, which you can say, hey, like, people have done this with you. So they'll go to Dean and say, hey, Dean, can I showcase your listing? I'm going to do an ad to try to find a buyer for your property. Like, is he going to say no? He shouldn't. So a lot of people are, using his listings to, now you may not want to use a multi, I mean, I don't know. People like that idea with Maui and it captures a lead. You might want to, you could use a lower price point.
Expensive ones don't get any traffic.
Yeah. Time intervals. I mean, like attracting people through time interval listings might be a good idea too, because the price point, you have to disclose that it's a time interval listing, but that price point might be attractive. I mean, like when somebody gets a Harbor Lights, it's like, yeah, advertise out of that, because that's a very unique thing that somebody's going to see, that's a price point on Maui and they can own a property for that price. So I don't know. Have you guys ever advertised your time intervals?
No, because they say you can buy a house for $15,000.
On the beach.
Yeah. So,
2 bedrooms.
Like
I mean,
Alton, Alabama, and they think that the houses are $15,000.
That's
Ocean
fine.
Front.
I've
Yes.
had a lot of experience with this.
Yes.
Because I have 27 listings between
Yes.
100,000 and 500,000.
Okay, great.
And again, it's not a great experience.